Welcome everyone to the Chair Professorship Series. And today we have the privilege of hosting Dr. Jean-Luc Boulnois at Woxsen University campus. Dr. Jean-Luc is currently the Adjunct Professor at Babson College, where he teaches entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial finance. He's been teaching there for the last 20 years and more. Just to tell you more about Dr. Jean-Luc, he's also been the executive chairman of FineHeart. Prior to that, the executive director of a company called Arrow International Incorporation, where he was in charge of the global business development teams, where he was taking care of the technology and led the market assessment teams. He was also associated with Somatech, which is an innovative international medical device company. Prior to that, he's also had a stint with Technomed, which is another medical device company. So his career has spanned across more than 5 decades by associating in the medical device health tech space. But what has been more interesting is that how his journey has transitioned from an academic, from being an industry expert to being an academic. In fact, he has been co-authored 5 books, and he has also written more than 35 peer-reviewed articles in the area of physics and biophysics, actually applied physics to be specific. In fact, he's also been associated with the universities across US, in Europe, and he is also binational, to be very specific. He's French and is American, and we have the fortune of having Dr. Boulnois at Woxsen campus, where he spent a day right now, and he's going to be staying for the next 2 weeks as part of his chair professorship assignment. We welcome you, Dr. Boulnois. I would like to have your opening remarks as we begin this conversation.
First of all, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity of coming to Woxsen University. Before accepting the position of this chair, I did a lot of research, and I found it to be a very amazing university. An incredible growth, apparently, in the last 10 years or so, from just a little business school with a lot of vision and ideas to a full university with a number of other departments besides the business school. There is departments in technology, department marketing. I mean, I was very impressed to see this, and that was one of the reasons after numerous exchanges, I accepted that chair. My goal being to try to duplicate what I've been doing for the last 20 years in the field of entrepreneurship, and bring that little skill set that I developed over the years to the community of the MBA students here under the Dean Banu, she and I had numerous very good exchanges on this program. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for letting me be part of your program, and I hope that I'll deliver what you have been expecting. And the standard is very simple. Babson, where I've been teaching for the last 20 years, is considered to be the #1 place for an MBA in entrepreneurship in the world. It has been ranked 26 years in a row as the #1 school. And so we have established a standard, and I want to maintain that standard wherever I go when I teach. And I want to bring that standard here to Woxsen that has already a very developed and advanced program to bring it to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Boulnois. I think it's quite interesting how your journey has been in the last, I would say, more than 3 decades, where you've transitioned from being an industry professional to becoming an academic, to teaching entrepreneurial finance to begin with at Babson College. So if you can tell us more about how this journey began?
Ever since I was young, I was fascinated by technology, and particularly by applied physics. My degree at Princeton University, my PhD, was actually on a laser. That had never been designed before. It was the first waveguide laser of a particular molecule. And from then on, I continued in the world of research. That's where I published all those many papers, research in the field of lasers. And I was very fortunate to be at the forefront of some very attractive research in this field. And after something like 15 years, an opportunity came completely unexpected to me. I was approached by a group of surgeons to design a laser that would have specific property in surgery. And I took that as a challenge. My team, I was running a lab with about 7 or 8 PhDs. We sat around the table and started to think, what would be the characteristics of such a laser? At the time, some of the technology did not exist. There are some materials that can do the job today in a much easier way than what we could do at the time, but those materials were not available. They had not been developed. So we developed what we would call a combination device, where 2 of the key properties, namely cutting and coagulating, were achieved by 2 different lasers that were combined into a single one. And then after a lot of testing on animals, etc., I ended up with this team of surgeons trying this new device in an operating room. And upon spending time around patient and the operating room, I realized that this is a place I want to be. Because, of course, my career, I had a lot of knowledge on a lot of different technologies that I thought could be used in healthcare to improve the patients' lives and their patients' outcomes in their disease. So I decided to switch from being a researcher to being an industrialist. And I joined a company that was called Technomed. That was my first operation in a company as a vice president of R&D, first as an engineer and eventually as a vice president of R&D, because there was a need to design a laser for a particular application in urology. So having done that, this company decided that the market in Europe was very fragmented, difficult to penetrate, and perhaps going to the United States would be an opportunity. So in 1990, I moved from France to Boston, and I developed the company, and eventually that company was sold a couple of years later. And having done that, once you have the bug of entrepreneurship, building a team, learning how to manage the team, learning to deal with customers, and that is the key thing of entrepreneurship, learning how to share your vision and leadership. Then one thing led to another. There was another opportunity, and I co-founded a company called Somatech in the cardiovascular space. And the cardiovascular space is a space that engineers love because the blood circulation is very much amenable to understanding it from physical principles. And as a result, that was my preferred space. And after that, I started to stay in businesses that had something to do with the cardiovascular space. So when that company was sold, there is a business journal in Boston. My name appeared in that business journal. That was a very successful transaction. And it was a transaction to Arrow International that I joined, of course, later. And my name attracted the faculty of Babson, and I was invited to visit the campus and interact with the faculty, and in particular with an important person by the name of Stephen Spinelli. He is today the president of Babson, but at the time he was the chair of the Department of Entrepreneurship at Babson. And he offered me basically an opportunity to teach. It happens that I have been teaching all my life. I was in the Peace Corps when I was in my 20s in Africa, and I taught mathematics over there in a foreign country. Subsequently, I taught quantum physics at Princeton. Then subsequently, I taught fluid mechanics at Paris University. So I've had a life of teaching is something I've always liked to do. And at Babson, I was given the opportunity to teach a course in entrepreneurial finance jointly with another faculty. And him and I basically established a great relationship. And from there on, I kind of moved on my own and created my own course of entrepreneurial finance. And it has become one of the key courses that we teach at Babson, Professor Chan, the other member, and myself. So that's how I moved from the scientific world through a transition period as a COO of a company, learning the ropes of entrepreneurship from inside out, and then eventually practicing that on the teaching side as a professor. I was, at the time, there was professor, and then titles changed when the restructure of Babson took place, and today I am an adjunct lecturer there.
Awesome. That seems like quite an inspiring story, in fact. You've also been a venture capitalist, right, in your journey. So perhaps if you can tell us more about what would be your advice for early age startup founders and co-founders who are starting their journey, and, you know, from your experience, of course, back 10 years, 15 years down the line to what things are right now, I'm sure things are not the same. So what would be your advice?
Very good point. When I co-founded Summitech, at that time, besides investing a little bit my own money with the other founder, the issue was it's a technology-driven venture. Therefore, it has to attract people who know high risk with a potential high reward. And that, unfortunately, is not done by angel investors, or it is sometimes done by angel investors, but it's not done by any regular investors. It's done by professional investors. And these are called venture capitalists. So I got to learn how a venture capitalist world functions and operates by essentially raising my first fund from venture capitalists. A company called Sofinova was one of my key investors. And then as I continued in the world of entrepreneurship, I started to meet a lot of venture capitalists. And one day, there was a group in creation with 3 other people that I knew very well that had a good track record of investing, and that were starting a new fund by the name of Dover Medical Venture. And because I was not a professional venture capitalist, but more of an entrepreneur venture capitalist, we created a position called Entrepreneur in Residence as a venture capitalist. So I was a venture capitalist for 1 year and had a very, very good inside track on how venture capitalists look at companies and what are the key features that they look at. And everybody knows they look at the team first. And we'll come back to that later on if necessary. So eventually, one opportunity came about, and I seized the opportunity. It was at the time of this transaction between Summitech and Arrow came back to me and offered me a position as director in their company, and I joined Arrow for internet. And then I dropped the venture capital activity and remained very good friend with those people. And that was a little stint in the world. Now, what would be my advice? Venture capital is not for every venture. One should know that on average, out of 100 business plans that are seen by venture capitalists, less than 3% will be funded, because venture capitalists are looking for very high risk investments with a potential very high reward. And they cannot afford to take a product that is going to be either a me too or something that doesn't have a huge success, because the return will not be there. They are in the business of return. They are financiers. Their job is to return to their own shareholders, which are called LPs, limited partners. So to do that successfully, they have acquired over the years an enormous knowledge on the characteristics of what will make a company successful potentially. Of course, there is still the risk that something happens, but they really are selective. And the number one, that's what I mentioned earlier, the number one criterion is the team. They focus on the team more than they focus on the opportunity. Of course, once they have a good sense that the team is able to deliver, then they will deep dive into every other characteristic, the market, the size of the opportunity, and whatever is necessary to be successful. And then, of course, the business model, and the plan to reach there, and their ability to continue to raise money. Because the life of a high-tech entrepreneur is you raise money continuously. From the time I arrived in the United States and sold my first operation, which was Technomed, I have been raising money all my life. I'm currently raising a $60 million fund for FineHeart, of which I am the executive chairman. So that's the life of entrepreneurs.
Awesome. I mean, that's like a story, I would believe, because you have seen generations coming up with their business plans and how these companies are failing, they are standing up on their own, and then they're succeeding over a period of time. So it's not easy. I mean, as you really said, that the venture capitalists are looking at a very high risk with a potential high reward. So I think that's quite interesting and a good takeaway from this conversation. My next question to you, Dr. Boulnois, is that you are also a chair professor at Woxsen right now, where we have established this as an honor to your academic journey. So in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation, what would be your plans to build this institution?
Well, that's a very loaded question, a very complex question. I think that from the outside, I have not lived in this country long enough. I have read a lot about India. This country is in enormous growth phase. And this is where, in entrepreneurship, we teach that. At the phase of growth is where the opportunities lie. So in my view, there are innumerable number of opportunities in every sector of the economy of this country, whether it's a social sector, whether it's a pure economic sector, whether it is technology-driven, whether it's retail-driven, whether it's related to agriculture. This country has a huge agriculture that is essential to its livelihood. All of this offers, in my view, enormous opportunities. However, to seize those opportunities, to recognize and seize those opportunities, you need people who have been trained. And there's a saying that entrepreneurs are not necessarily born. They can be trained to become entrepreneurs. And Woxsen has had the vision, in my view, to create an entrepreneurship department and structure a whole faculty around that subject, because Woxsen can be and should be and will be, I hope, the cradle of creating those entrepreneurs that this country needs so badly in order to continue its growth. Because without them, the country will not be able to continue to sustain this thing. And it has all of the assets in its people, the quality of the education, the quality of the training, the resources, the number of people available, and therefore the pool of labor that could be used to support those developments and those entrepreneurial ventures. All of it is in there. A vibrant economy. There is a lot of capital, from what I understand. In fact, I have made some research in preparing my class, and I proposed quite a series of readings to my students to see how much capital is available in this country. The question is to direct this capital towards those ventures. And they have to start small. Sure, there are large companies, and like in any country, they have availability to pools of capital that are not accessible to the early stage entrepreneur. It doesn't matter. The resources will come as those businesses are being built, and access to resources, whether they be human resources, whether they be structural resources, whether they be governmental resources, whether they be capital resources, will come as this country grows along. So that's my vision, and I think Woxsen is uniquely positioned to play a key role in that regard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boulnois. I think that gives us a perspective on how you see the institution evolve in the area of entrepreneurship. My next question is more on the lines of, how do you see the relations between India and the United States of America deepening further? Perhaps, in the last couple of decades, we have seen a good number of trade happening between the two countries. But in the next, say, 10 years down the line, or you look at Vision 2047, when India would have completed 100 years of independence, right? So what would be, in your opinion, some of the opportunities between these two countries in order to support its economy?
Oh, that's a question for somebody with a good understanding of geopolitics. I am probably not probably not the best person to answer it, but I'll give you my little take. First of all, I can tell you that clearly the exchanges don't necessarily exist on the economic scale. About 1/3 of my students in my class come from India. That's a very important statement. It shows that India is preparing to compete on the world's affairs on a level playing field with the big players. China, India, America are economies that are going to dominate the world in the next so many years as you suggested, and I don't know exactly in which order, and it does not matter. What matters is that India has, it seems historically, always tried to be a balance between the East and the West, the strong culture which is inherited from the time the British were occupying this country before independence in 1947. They have left a sense of a reach for excellence, a reach for important values that are being endorsed by the country, by this country, and developed and give a particular I would say a particular direction which is embedded into the culture, which has nothing to do with the British culture, yet has been able to assimilate it in a very constructive way. Now, between America and India, what could be the future relationship? I think that there's got to be more and more of a understanding of each other's culture. The American culture has and I know very well, being myself binational and bicultural, has a tendency to be playing a little bit of a dominating role. It's a fact. It's not a critic, it's a fact. Size matters, okay? And the economy of the country being so powerful has an influence. And with this influence comes a model which is the American model. And I think America starting to realize, and I say that with a very proud way as an American, to realize that that model is not necessarily a model that all the rest of the world wants to adapt. And in particular, being sensitive to other models and other cultures will help a lot in the relationships going forward. So in a nutshell, not being a specialist of those geopolitical subjects, I would say increasing the understanding of each other's culture, of each other's goals and aspiration, and the aspiration of their people, which is what geopolitics is all about, while respecting the culture and the value of the other side. And it's very difficult because there is a tendency when you are the bigger player to kind of take it for granted that this is going to happen naturally. I think some humility on the part of the leader is always a sign of strength. And I think that both countries have that humility and that sign of strength. And I hope that this is the way it's going to go. This is not a very good response because this is not my favorite subject of knowledge.
Thank you so much. I believe the cultural exchange between the two countries is very, very critical because in the next few years, I believe, with the advancement of technologies, equally the emotional quotient of the people involved in the processes is equally going to be more important in any sector, in any line of businesses you take. So I believe, you've actually given us a perspective on the cultural side, which is equally important. My last question to you, Dr. Boulnois, is what would be your 3 key mantras in the area of entrepreneurship, not just to the Woxsen fraternity, but to the world at large?
The first one I would have is not to hesitate to think very big. By setting a very high standard and a very high goal, and ultimately entrepreneurship has to be to the service of the livelihood of people, because those people are viewed sometimes as customers, but in reality they are people. They have aspirations, they have goals. So the role, in my view, of a good entrepreneur is to set a goal that's very high, a very high standard. That is giving you a vision. You may not exactly reach it, but it gives you the pathway of where your company as an entrepreneur should go. That would be my number one. My number two would be to understand that you cannot do things alone. You have to build a team. And a real leader is someone who is able to build a team where they are smarter than he is, so that the sum of all of those skills and those intellects will contribute to the benefit not only of the company that they start or they run or they grow, but will also benefit society at its large, because that's where this entrepreneurial venture is eventually going to thrive. So that would be my second one. And my third one would be to listen. Listening is very difficult. The tendency is to think that once we have an answer to a question, the question is more or less solved. That's not the case. Listening means continuously being open to other ideas, other ways, understanding that your own vision may be very great, but it's equally as great as another vision to reach a similar objective. And in trying to listen and observe other people's visions and understand what they can do, I believe that it will contribute to the better of mankind in a certain sense.
No, I think I totally agree with all the 3 points. Just to sum up what you said, first is to not hesitate from thinking big, right? So one should aim of high standards. Second is, you said one should build a team and not lead by himself or herself, because
Correct.
You need to have the sum of all the intellects that you can possibly have in your team to grow the organization. And a third one that you said is very, very pertinent, and that is, you need to listen to what your customers want and keeping them at the core of your business.
Not only your customers, but your own staff, your own employees. They are not actually employees. They are collaborators in a common vision that, as a leader, it's your duty to share in order to gather all the people and create the incentive to reach that vision as a team and as a goal. So humility is a difficult quality to have, but great leaders have a lot of humility.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Boulnois. I think it's a great conversation, and with this, we have come to the end of this conversation, and we'll be back very soon with another episode with a chair professor very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.